Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. So it's been about a week since my last video, and I'll get into why, but more so, I want to talk about what this past week has taught me, that stacking precious metals is about a whole lot more than just silver and gold. Congratulations to Trenosaurus for being the first to comment on my last video. If y'all want to be shouted out in the next one, make sure you get to the comments first. So like I said, it's been about a week since my last video, and I didn't just take off time for no reason. This past week, I actually had to go be with my mom. She was in the hospital. And when something like that happens, everything else just stops. Videos don't matter, the markets doesn't matter, prices don't matter, you just go. And that moment, being there, dealing with everything else that comes with it, made something very clear to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't panicking about money. I wasn't sitting there wondering how I was going to afford the trip. I wasn't thinking about what bills were about to hit my account or trying to figure out what I needed to sell or sacrifice. I could just be present. I could just go. And all that might sound simple, but if you've ever been in a situation where life hits you out of nowhere, you know that for some, I might even say for most, that's just not normal. That's not how most people operate. And I started to think about why that was different for me this time, because it wasn't always like that for me either. Before I go any further, I do want to mention that my mother is okay. She's out of the hospital. She is at home, resting and healing, and any prayers sent her way would be greatly appreciated. But I do want to take a moment to look back. Before I ever started stacking precious metals, my finances were reactive. Money would come in and money would go out. I didn't really have a system or a plan. I wasn't thinking about what if this happens or what if something goes wrong. I was just living in the moment, handling whatever came up. And if something big happened, like a medical situation, a car issue, anything unexpected, it immediately became stressful. Not just emotionally, but financially. And that's where most of us are. Whether we realize it or not, we are one situation from having to make a massive bad decision. Selling something that we shouldn't, going into debt, or putting something off that really shouldn't be put off. I've been there. I was there pretty recently. In fact, just a few years ago, right before I started stacking precious metals, I was completely homeless. Me and my family were living in a tent and then a camper, and we really had no solid foundation. And of course, I did the thing that almost everyone I know has done. They put money into a savings account, but it's attached to your phone. You can easily go onto your bank app, transfer the money back over, and be able to spend that money just like it was any other money. Then I started stacking. I started putting that savings account into precious metals, and it wasn't so easy to spend. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This is not a video saying buy gold and silver and all your problems will go away, because that's just not reality. But what I will say is stacking precious metals forced me to change how I think about money. And that's the part that no one really talks about. Most of the conversation around gold and silver is about inflation, currency, long-term value, and those things do matter, but the real change happens in your behavior. Because when you start stacking consistently, even something simple like a set amount each week, you're forced to ask a better question. Where is this money going? What am I wasting? What can I cut back on? And what actually matters? You can't stack consistently if your finances are all over the place. At some point, something has to give. And it wasn't like I bought my first ounce of silver and then I was suddenly fixed. There was a pretty strong learning curve. I put way too much money in at first. I pushed bills aside so that I could maintain the lifestyle of continuing to go out to eat or watching entertainment things. I didn't have any financial discipline at the beginning, and it actually cost me my entire stack on multiple occasions. I had to sell everything in order to make up the bills that I was pushing aside. It wasn't until I pushed everything aside and started over. I set aside a fixed amount regularly, just starting small, converting that very small amount into something physical, something I wasn't planning on touching. And that one decision created a ripple effect, because now that money wasn't available to spend. It wasn't just sitting in an account waiting to be transferred over to another to be spent just like any other money. This money was gone, but in a good way, and that forced me to adjust everything else. If I wanted to keep stacking, I had to pay attention to my spending, cut out unnecessary expenses, and plan ahead instead of just reacting. And over time, that built a discipline within me. Not because I was trying to be disciplined, but because I didn't have a choice if I wanted to stay consistent. What this week has taught me, as much as I believe in the precious metals, they should not be your all-in-all emergency fund. And I've said in the past that how I would suggest to start stacking is to view it as an emergency fund, but that's really only so that you can get your mindset right. Being able to lean on these in the time that you absolutely need them is fantastic. But once you get to a certain point, you're going to want to subconsciously start saving up some cash as more of a buffer away from your precious metal stack. And I'm not going to be saying you should be saving this much money or at this point start saving cash, because this is all stuff that you're going to do subconsciously. This is all stuff that you're going to do without trying to do it so that you can protect your assets. Your stack is long-term. It's preservation. It's something that you build over time. And emergencies are short-term. They're unpredictable, and they require liquidity. And that's when I had realized I made progress, not just in stacking, but in structuring my finances, because I didn't have to touch my metals. I had enough in place to handle the situation without disrupting anything. And that's a completely different level of stability. One of the biggest shifts for me has been moving from a one bucket mindset into a layered approach. Before, everything was just money, but now it's separated. I've got day-to-day spending, I've got my cash buffer for unexpected situations, and I've got my long-term savings. Even my long-term savings in metals is separated between what I call a surface stack and a deep stack. The surface stack is just stuff that's right there on top, that's easy to sell, very liquid, that has no emotional attachment for me, when a deep stack item is something that I really, really enjoy, that it's going to be a pretty life-changing thing in order for me to sell that. Each one of these buckets have their own purpose. Each one solves a different problem. When they all get mixed together, you lose clarity. But when they're separated, everything starts to make a lot more sense. You're not guessing anymore. You're operating with intention. A lot of people in this space focus too heavily on price. Is silver up? Is silver down? Is now the right time to buy? And all those things do matter, but they're not the big foundation. Because if your financial structure isn't solid, price doesn't fix that. You could buy at the perfect time and still be in a bad position if your system isn't right. This week had nothing to do with spot price. It had everything to do with structure. And that's what allowed me to show up where I needed to be without hesitation. If I had to sum up this into one big idea, I would say that precious metals didn't just give me a way to save, they forced me to learn how to manage my money. And that's the real value. Because once you start learning that, everything else improves. You start thinking long term, you start preparing instead of reacting, and you start making decisions based on stability instead of emotion. All of that carries into every part of your life. If you're early in this, or you're just thinking about getting into precious metals, don't overcomplicate it. You don't need a perfect system on day one, just start simple. Set a consistent amount, pay attention to where your money is going, and build from there. Over time, you'll naturally adjust. You'll see what works and you'll see what doesn't work, and you'll start building your own structure. This past week wasn't something I planned for, but it showed me something I needed to see. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm not where I used to be. And all that progress came from small, consistent decisions over time. Stacking was a part of it, but more importantly, it was a starting point for everything else. If you take anything from this video, let it be that it's not just about what you're stacking. It's about what your stack is doing to you, how it's changing your habits, how it's changing your mindset, and how it's preparing you for real life. Because at the end of the day, that is what really matters. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this week while I was gone, but there's a lot more to come, so I'll see you in the next one. I just made my own line of coffee. Joseph's Reserves It's Today Again coffee. Most mornings aren't dramatic. They're quiet. You wake up, pour yourself a cup, and now you have a choice. Drift through the day or take hold of what's in front of you. That's really what this whole thing's about. Showing up, building good habits, staying disciplined in the small things. Whether that's stacking consistently, learning something new, or just being faithful with what you've been given. I put these words on every bag to remind myself first. Every morning is a gift. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. So take a breath, take a sip, and let's get to work. It's today again. You can now write me at Joseph's Reserves, 10160 Highway 242, Suite 800, number 401 in Conroe, Texas, zip code 77385. Make sure to include your information so I can write you back. If you liked today's video, make sure you go down and give it a thumbs up. Go into the comment section to start a conversation or continue one. If you know anyone that needs to hear this today, please share the video and subscribe if you haven't already. But most of all, thank you so much for watching. And just remember, every ounce adds up. So no matter how small, just keep stacking.